Meeting to order. Has everybody had a chance to look at the agenda? I have a motion to approve it?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
As we do at the beginning and end of every meeting, we look forward to the public coming out and commenting. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak today? Not seeing anyone. We'll move on. Has everybody had a chance to look at the consent agenda?
Yes, and I have a correction.
Okay.
Under the April 26th minutes, under committee reports, it said Mr. Bray reported that West put on a video, and I think someone else did that, because I wouldn't have.
Yeah,
I saw that too, wasn't it?
that was me.
Yeah. That was you.
So it should be changed to Mr. Likely.
Good catch.
There you go.
Anything else?
Yeah, I had a, under the personnel changes. Are we doing the consent?
Yes, consent agenda.
It says something about approving retirements effective June 30th, 2011. There's two sets there. See that?
Just look-
Instead of June 30th, 2000.
Well, there's some for June 30th, 2012, but then there's also three.
Do you think
Oh,
it
the
was a-
second one down. yeah.
Richard, Adam, and Teresa, who all retired last year.
No, it should be 2012, it's a typo.
Just a typo.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
They were 2012s as well?
Yes,
Oh,
it's
okay.
2012.
Oh,
So-
all right.
A motion to approve the consent agenda with that correction.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, reports and recognition. I just have a very brief report, which is Yahoo! Congratulations, everybody, for getting the budget passed. Thank you very much for all of your hard work. It was without question a team effort of the administration and the board, and I'm thrilled to be a part of it. Dr. Richard?
We learned today, I have several items, we learned today that Wilton High School was named one of the top 10 high schools in the state in a U.S. News and World Report ranking. And as you know, there are a lot of different rankings of schools depending on the criteria they use. Rankings can, and depending on the year, rankings can go up and down. This particular U.S. News and World Report used four criteria. One criterion was student-teacher ratio. Second was college readiness, and the way they measured this is by looking at the percentage of success on either advanced placement or the International Baccalaureate exams, which are both very rigorous. The third is the percentage of capped students achieving proficiency ratings in math, and the fourth in reading on the capped. So for a variety of reasons, as you know, we try not to get too low if we're not where we'd like to be in every one of these rankings. We also try not to get too excited when we're at the very top, which is a frequent occasion. So again, this is, I think, yet another piece of evidence that our kids are doing well and are judged so by different organizations. Second item, the music adjudication. Last Friday, the Middlebrook 8th grade students participated in a festival at the called Music in the Parks at Six Flags in New Jersey. I spent a year there one day. It was my daughter's 7th grade birthday, 12 other teens, 7th grade. The chorus came in second and received an excellent rating. Orchestra first place received excellent. Second place band was excellent rating, and second place jazz ensemble was received a superior. I think we're pleased to learn, and Julie reported, that the orchestra won best overall in the festival, and 8th grader Quinn Reedy, who's an extraordinary young man, won the outstanding jazz soloist. You may know his mother is a renowned gospel singer, and there's certainly a lot of music in that family, but she happened to be one of the chaperones, which was kind of a treat for her, I'm sure. The trophies are on display in the Middlebrook front office, and congratulations to our talented 8th grade musicians. Another Middlebrook honor, on Tuesday, May 1st, the Office of the Attorney General issued an official citation recognizing one of our 8th graders, Jesse Jessica Copsa, is that correct? Copsa. For her outstanding work in writing skills. She was won 3rd place in the 2012 law essay contest. And the topic of this year's essay was timely. Should the government pass a law setting a minimum age for kids to join social networking sites? Or should it be left up to parents, kids, and or the social networking sites themselves to determine and enforce age restrictions on joining such sites? If the government should make the rules, what should be the minimum age? And so, quite a long question, but one that Jessica apparently wrote a wonderful essay on, so we're really pleased and proud of her. In terms of Miller Driscoll, I think it's important to note some of the activities that have wonderful applications. On Earth Day, Cheryl reported that students participated in activities and planting in the outdoor learning center. Kindergartners planted impatiens in the Rainbow Garden. 1st grade students planted sunflowers and went on a scavenger hunt, learned about recycling. And the 2nd graders planted Indian corn and heard it talk about composting and planting shrubs. So really wonderful applications for that outdoor learning. 2nd graders had the opportunity to hear a performance about diversity and tolerance by a group of high school students called Kids on the Block. I'm not familiar with them, but I'd love to hear them. These performers are really a dedicated and talented group of our high school students. And then yesterday, Cheryl reports that the school held first of 2 of 6 sessions of orientation for incoming kindergarten parents. On May 14th and 21st, they're going to hold 4 more sessions. The first 3 sessions were for veteran kindergarten parents, and the last 2 are geared to first-time kindergarten parents. So I think it's important to note the students participated in an activity in kindergarten classrooms, and parents heard a PowerPoint that talked about, that put together by the Cheryl and her staff, PTA and continuing ed. And later in the month, the parents are invited to a night meeting about the nuts and bolts, challenges and joys of raising a kindergartner in 2012. Some of us remember that as if it were yesterday, I think, but sounds like a really good orientation program. Finally, Cider Mill. As you know, one of the goals we have in our schools is to promote and try to urge kids to exercise and live healthy lifestyles. And we've partnered in the past with groups like the YMCA, other groups. One of the examples of this occurred in March, late March, and it was a month dedicated to healthier eating. And we partnered with Chartwell's, our food service providers, and it was called the Fruit and Vegetable Challenge. And then during the week, Jenny reported of March 26th to the 30th, students participated in a school-wide challenge that encouraged them to eat healthy fruits and vegetables in the spirit of competition. That was a little scary when I read that, thinking about how many apples can you eat.
We had counters, and they knew that the lunch supervisors were going to be going around, and they couldn't just take a bite of something. They had to eat the whole thing. And then get counters.
The old paper towel trick didn't work.
They loved having the counters like you have in supermarkets or airports where they're counting and keeping track.
Wow.
They thought that was fantastic.
You know.
And they were quite honest about it, so we were very pleased, and we have noticed that they do eat a lot more fruits and vegetables.
Yeah, I love this. Brian Reynolds, who's a terrific director of our food service, works for Chartwell's, said the key goal of this promotion is to, quote, get your plate in shape. By rethinking the way we put together, mine is get more on it, rethinking the way we put together meals by starting with fruits and vegetables, then adding some grains, and finishing with lean protein and low-fat dairy. Mr. Reynolds reported that in the course of a week, Cider Mill students consume more than 3,500 servings of fruit and vegetables at lunchtime. So that's really a terrific way of really promoting the healthier eating that we all just watched a report on the news a few minutes ago about yet another obesity report. So it's something we're working on as a nation as well. So.
Thank you. Moving on to committee reports, I do want to note that WEF is also holding a meeting this evening, so Dr. Richards is going to have to scoot out here at some point towards the end of the meeting. Anybody have anything to report this evening?
Yeah, the OPEB and Retirement Trust met with the investment committee last week, and we have hired fiduciary advisors to manage basically the retirement trust. The OPEB trust is staying at Vanguard. But the most important thing is that the first checks for the retirees have gone out from the new custodian, which is Wells Fargo, in early April successfully.
Thank you. Seeing no others, we'll move on to the district staff development report. Mr. Canty?
Well, our year-end reporting continues in earnest. Tonight we have the report of our district staff development program. Very proud of the work this year, a comprehensive range of training opportunities for our staff, and felt very excited and comfortable that the work aligned with the strategic plan and the various elements that we've already discussed. We have a vibrant committee, our district staff development committee, which consists of a wide range of teachers across the buildings and our administrative team. And that committee is led by Dr. Martha Russell, who's our instructional leader for our staff development program. And she is going to present a brief overview of the program for you tonight. Of course, you have received the comprehensive report, which we'll be posting on our website after tonight's meeting, which, if you've had the opportunity to review, really does point to the wide range of training opportunities that are available for our staff. After Dr. Russell presents her report, we'll be happy to answer your questions, and Matt Heffer will join us at the table, of course, because of the technology focus with many of our training programs.
Let the record show that that report was 103 pages long.
Let the record show for the first time produced electronically. Dr. Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Canty. And thank you for inviting me here to present an overview of the staff development in Wilson District over 2011-2012. In terms of our staff development, it's all planned underneath the district strategic plan, along with the Learning Forward's National Staff Development Standards. And as you may very well be familiar with, we have traditionally had 4 staff development days, 3 which are planned and organized on the building level, and 1 which is planned and organized by the staff development committee that Tim mentioned. And I also want to give my thanks to their good work this year. In terms of other on and off-site PD opportunities, I want to talk about the wonderful grant that the Wilton Education Foundation gave us for the purpose of some summer staff development opportunities, and I'll talk about that a couple slides later in the presentation. And I also want to mention the Wilton Tech Institute, because there are many opportunities in technology which have been provided by the Tech Institute in terms of Summer 2011 Institute and Spring 2012 Institute. Teachers may not look forward to the ending of summer, but they always look forward to opening day, not only catching up with one another, but they look forward to being welcomed by the Board of Education and our superintendent, Dr. Gary Richards. Dr. Richards always starts off his talk with a lot of humor, and then once we're all laughing, he goes over all of those accomplishments the year previous to pat people on the back. And this year he talked a lot about the district strategic plan, but he always sets the tone for the teachers for the oncoming year. And so I'm going to play an excerpt of that.
Oh, good.
Oops.
Right before the snow.
Yikes.
Right before the storm hit you.
There we go.
I'd like to leave you with some words written several years ago by one who has mentored so many of us. He wrote, "The most compelling aspect of our profession is that each day, thousands of parents entrust to us their most cherished gifts, their children. As we know, these gifts come in all shapes, sizes, dispositions, and conditions. We welcome and teach them all. The introverted, the extroverted, the autistic, the athletic, and the artistic. Those with special needs and those with special gifts and talents. We don't return any of these gifts, nor do we ask for red checks. We teach them all because we are not simply doing a job, but embracing a calling. A calling in which we nurture all children by making their care our concern.
And that's why we enjoy hearing Dr. Richard speak, not only for those words to set the tone for the year, but also for his humor. I want to go on to talk about our opening day speaker. This is the second year in a row we've had an opening day speaker, and I know most all of you were there. And this year the opening day speaker was Norm Bosio, who has been a teacher, a principal, a superintendent, and he's written a book. I've got to read what the title is, How to Stay Motivated on the Deck of the Titanic. And so he's in a very humorous way, he reminded teachers of their mission, that their work is really important in the lives of the children that they teach. And this is a very small excerpt of one of the first things they said. Come on, try again.
I've been teaching for many, many years. Some of you, and I know who you are, you don't want to be here right now. You want to be in the classrooms getting ready for the first day. Let me tell you something. Not one kid on Monday's going to go home and tell their parents, oh, what an awesome bulletin board.
So, this is just a little snippet, but he had people pretty much laughing the whole time. I want to go on and talk about staff development opportunities. First I want to mention that there, in this coming slide, you'll see some phrases in red, and this is verbiage taken directly from the district's strategic plan. And this particular verbiage talks about attendance at meetings and conferences, and many teachers, although there were, I guess in terms of off-site opportunities, there were a whopping 326 off-site opportunities for teachers. In terms of state and regional conferences and national conferences, there were many opportunities as well. Common Core state standards, NEASC accreditation training, tri-state training, various subject area conferences. There were too numerous to mention here tonight, but I did want to mention this. And I want to talk now about the Wilton Education Foundation grant of $20,000 that allowed 18 different teachers to take advantage of workshops, conferences, as well as meetings in all subject areas: science, music, art, special education. It was a wonderful opportunity for those 18 teachers. In terms of collaborative work, I want to mention the instructional day teams organized on the building level. So each building organized and put together instructional-based data teams for the purpose of analyzing student performance data. The K through 5 literacy team, in order to coordinate literacy throughout K-5, and the K through 12 mathematics study team to look at the math program K through 12. And I might add that Tim Canty's going to be presenting the work of that group the next Board of Education meeting. In terms of study groups for the second year were building-based, organized on a building-based building basis for the purpose of making not only the convenience of the meeting place, but times of meetings, and also for the purpose of really looking down deeply, not only at student work, but teacher lesson plans. And this type of arrangement was much easier to achieve those goals. And now I'm going to talk about the staff development that was on site throughout the district, not only on the building level, but on the district level. In terms of building-based staff development, most of those opportunities, or all of those opportunities, are detailed in this staff development report, but I just wanted to bring to your attention a few things that went on. There were many workshops on school climate. One opportunity afforded the high school students and parents in the community was to listen to Kathy Snow, an acclaimed inclusionist. And in terms of student success plans, each building had training in this area: SRBI, Middlebrooks, Harvard Project Zero, Teaching for Understanding, and I mentioned again the data teams, and reading and writing. In terms of district staff development, not only was staff development planned underneath the district strategic plan umbrella, we also took into account input from teachers throughout the district who were asked to give us their curriculum and instruction needs based on their student needs, not their needs, but their student needs, so that we could increase learning in the classroom. If you look at some of these categories, critical thinking, differentiation, creativity, these are all areas that you would see in a 21st century learning environment. In terms of curriculum and differentiated instruction, Sharon Taberski came back for another year to focus on reading for the K through 5 teachers. Benna Kallick, who I'm sure you've all heard about for her work on Habits of Mind with Art Costa, came and talked to 2 different audiences, a K through 5 audience and a 6 through 12 audience, on launching self-directed learners. And those habits of mind, creativity, flexible thinking, critical thinking, are also all in line with the learning that you'd expect to be taking place in a 21st century classroom. Looking globally, Dr. Peter Libre came by to talk about climate change, and not only the changes that occur, why they occur, and what we can do about them. And there were many teachers that came up to me after that workshop excited because they were going to bring some of these materials into their classroom to their students. In terms of World Language Lab training, the brand new World Language Lab at the high school, Chip Howe came in to talk about the Sony Virtuoso program. And in terms of special education, education law, and social emotional, Attorney Bellick came in to talk about privacy and confidentiality, and Attorney Tom Mooney came in to talk about regulating online speech. And as far as cyberbullying or bullying in general, the Connecticut, whoops, shouldn't have touched it, right? The Connecticut State's Attorney Rich Colangelo and Sergeant Matt Brodacki of the Weston Police Department came to hold a panel discussion on cyberbullying. As in terms of technology, Diane McKeever is always a favorite because she's so vibrant, and the participants in her workshops always rave about how much she teaches them. In terms of other technological workshops, Paula Palermo from Tech Smart Services and Tony Brusciati from Sacred Heart came. They also teach for the Wilton Tech Institute, and so the participants really enjoyed hearing what they had to say. And as you very well know, educational games are key in terms of developing not only those critical thinking skills, but creative thinking in the classroom. I just want to talk about planning for next year. And in terms of planning, we're going to, as we have been during the year, we're going to continue to examine the context, content, and process of staff development in our district. And we'll be implementing, we'll be mapping an implementation plan for 2012, 2013. We'll probably certainly want to focus on curriculum development, 21st century skills, technology, and looking at data that the data team brings forth in terms of student performance. And so that's all I have to say, and I'd be happy to answer your questions.
That's wonderful, thank you.
So we'll be happy to take your questions, if any.
I was very impressed with the report and professional development that we are able to provide for our teachers.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you feel it was fully funded this year? Could you have done more? Were you not able to do something as a result of not being able to have the money available?
I don't think we felt frustration this year in terms of the extent to which we were able to respond to the requests that teachers made when they came forward. I will say, though, that next year's budget increases the funding available for professional development, which will provide us with further opportunities. One of the areas that we want to explore, which we haven't been able to fund recently, is the opportunity to use consultants, outside consultants, to come in and work directly with our teachers. So our team is currently looking at that opportunity as a possibility for the out years.
Did you video any of the speakers so that other teachers could look at them at a later time?
It sort of depends. So, some of them are they're protective of their words as you're paying them. So we took some nice pictures, but but it is something that the Tech Advisory Committee has been talking about, creating banks of videos, kind of homegrown, about things we do and how we use our systems, and just have them on Edline so that teachers can go in and refresh their memory and things that they learn.
Are you going to talk about the keynote in the fall? Are you going to mention that?
Oh, I meant to mention that. I'm sorry. That was one of the things I was going to talk about.
Yeah, because just before you said, just to set
because
that.
after I did talk about the keynote this year, and we're very excited. Mr. Canty has managed to ask to bring Alan November here on the August day, and he is a internationally renowned technology specialist in education. And I learned today when I was doing a little research on him that Technology and Learning magazine named him as one of the 15 most influential thinkers of the decade. So we're all really excited about bringing Alan November to our opening day.
We're also,
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, we're also excited that we're tentatively scheduled to share that opportunity with the Weston Public Schools. I know the board in past years has talked about the idea of collaboration and sharing expenses between districts. So when you think about the Weston Public Schools, although smaller than Wilton, they're organized in the same way that we are, K2, 3, 5, 6, 8, 9, 12. So we think that this can become the first step in what can be a wonderful partnership for the future. The other thing is I really appreciate the fact that you've given me credit for bringing Dr. November forward, but the honest truth is that Matt Heffer and I attended a conference where Mr. November was presenting, and he ran into a technology glitch. So Matt ran up on stage. Actually,
Tripped on that cord.
this is a true story. He used his cell phone so that
I tethered my iPhone to his AirBook, and he was allowed to use my Wi-Fi because he wasn't getting a Verizon signal.
And I think that contributed greatly on two fronts. Number one, that he's coming here, and number two, I think we got a little bit of a cost break.
No, but he is really a remarkable.
We're really excited.
And one of the things he does that I think is terrific is he starts the day with a breakfast with some of our students. And he really teases out what's happening in technology, how they're using technology, and he brings that into his presentation later to talk about some of the things they've said. Because as you know, so many of our youngsters are very sophisticated, and but they bring a fresh, honest view of what's going on. So he can use that in a motivational way, not insulting or anything, but just to say, here's what your kids are saying about the technology and what they would like to see you be, engaged in the future. So it's pretty inspiring to hear him do that.
We had put off a couple of professional development days till the end of the year. Are we still holding those at the end of the year? Okay.
Yes.
And what will be going on similar to this?
Well, it's actually interesting how a hurricane and a October snowstorm could work to our advantage in that the June days are actually providing us with an opportunity to work with our teachers and conduct some training programs, some of which would have taken place in the normally scheduled time, but other needs are emerging, which will allow us to use those dates to prepare for next year. So in some respects, we're going to be able to benefit from getting a jump start on the 2012-13 school year because of these PD days in June.
I had two questions. One was, what are you most proud of in accomplishing in professional development this year? And what do you look to do differently next year?
Well, impulsively, I'll answer the question first. The first thing that always comes to mind is the evolution of our training programs in technology. There are a number of opportunities for teachers that exist now. Matt Heffer and his team, the instructional leadership team, that group, the efforts that they've made through the Tech Institute, through some web-based offerings, I think is something that emerges in my mind. I also think that in this past year, there's been, let's say, greater focus on specific needs in our district, and the idea around collaboration is emerging and trying to embed our staff development within our programs. So our work in the literacy area, I think, is notable, particularly at the K-5 level. Next year, there's, and we actually are planning to present to the board in the fall, which we haven't done before, our plan for professional development, which we're developing according to a 3-year strategy. The committee has worked this year to define, as Martha had said previously, 3 focus areas for professional development. One, curriculum development, and of course a piece of that is the Common Core work. The second is in conversation around cutting-edge instructional practice, which generically is often called 21st century skill building, along those lines, and then linking that through performance, student performance data. So we're in the process now of mapping a strategy that we think will benefit the district, in that we want to work to improve the extent to which we follow up on training. So it's more systemic. It begins in August, and then there's consistent follow-through and feedback and evaluation throughout the year. These 4 days that we have for professional development are wonderful, but they can lead to a fragmented approach. So we're trying to be more focused in our work, and again, focus on follow-up. So we'll have to see how that plays out in the coming months in terms of our planning. And again, we do look forward to reporting to the board on that plan in September.
And I'd have to agree with you in terms of a very bright staff development committee. Many rich discussions in terms of what those focus areas should be. And as you mentioned, the idea of follow-up, so that there's actual implementation in the classroom, which will affect student learning, because that's the important piece. And And the idea of planning a whole year rather than just 4 separate days, so that we make sure the teachers get it and they're using it and they're integrating these skills into the classroom using technology. I just think, to me, that would be the highlight of what went on, and just continuing those rich discussions next year.
This will be the main focus of our Central Curriculum Council meeting on Thursday afternoon of this week.
I think if I was just going to add one little thing about what we're proud of, the Wilton Education Foundation was able to fund a group of 22 teachers, K-12, to start the path towards becoming SMART certified lesson developers. And it's rigorous training. They do 3 face-to-face courses all day with a SMART trainer. And then there's online courses that they take, and then they have to take an exam. And we wouldn't have been able to fund this out of our budget, but the Wilton Education Foundation generously funded those first 2 days of training. And I was able to find enough money in my budget to fund the online portions in the last day. And what's exciting about it is the teachers went and gave back right away. They had their training October 17th and 18th, and then on the November day, half of them went out and became teachers and taught and shared what they learned. And some of them also came back again in the spring and taught at the Tech Institute. We actually also taught administrators how to use smart boards during the spring Tech Institute, but I'll save some of that for the next board meeting.
I just would also like to acknowledge the work of Ann Paul and her team. Sometimes in these comprehensive reports, we often may not bring forward and focus on the work that is ongoing in special education, because it's an everyday type experience. And Ann Paul has done wonderful work with her instructional leadership team and throughout her teaching force, paraprofessional force, in providing up-to-date training for our teachers working with our special education students.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much for your
Thank you.
report.
Thanks very much.
Matt will be back in a couple weeks.
We move on to a review of policy and regulation 4118.25 on social networking. It's on the agenda for review and discuss.
I asked Mr. Hepford to be with me for that, for the technical portion
Was
of
back
this.
faster than Tim thought.
For those of you for whom this may feel like deja vu, I'm sorry. Let me just give a little history to the newer members of the board. This policy was first drafted in November of 2010, and we got it as far as the consent agenda in March of 2011. And we were asked to pull it by the WEA because they still had continuing concerns and questions. Although we had met with all of our bargaining units and representatives from our discretionary staff to make sure that employees really understood what this policy was about, and the WEA still had continuing questions and concerns, largely about clarity of language and what they perceived to be changes in working conditions, which we did not agree with. Also, at the time, we started to move into preparing for negotiations for the teacher's contract, which ended up in arbitration. So our priorities switched for a 6-month period of time, and we just had tabled this. So this spring, we started reviewing it again, and we had sent it a couple of weeks ago back to the WEA leadership and asked them to review it again, and told them we were bringing it forward for discussion tonight. So here we are. They still have some continuing questions. We have incorporated, the draft that you got in your packet is the policy that got to the consent agenda in March of 2011. The things that are underlined are the few changes that we've made in discussion with the WEA. And we have those are the ones that are highlighted in your copy tonight. But before we do that, I want Matt to talk a little bit about, Matt and I have kind of been working on this together for the last year and a half from a personnel perspective as well as the technology perspective. So I'd like him to speak for a minute on why we believe this policy is important. Yes,
Just,
Laura?
So that means that this is not in place now?
No,
There
we
is
don't
no-
have a policy, correct.
As you know, since the mid-2000s, social networking started as a river and then a flood and then a waterfall, and it really is enveloping every part of everything we do. You don't hear a famous person who doesn't tweet something, this or that, and sometimes they're charming, and sometimes they're little whoopses, and sometimes they're embarrassing. But for school systems, they can be very dangerous, costly, and damaging to someone's career. And what the first thing we did was look at our existing policies, and we really found that there wasn't anything that was explicit enough to handle the types of situations that would arise should something happen with social networking and an employee. It was also the recommendation of CAVE and other states' boards of education. So it's really falling in line with the way the country is going, not just the state of Connecticut. And even in this time, since this was on the consent agenda, and Ellen has a stack of them here, I send them to
Articles.
her when I get articles
Teachers
to
losing their jobs.
publications about employees of school systems. There's one this fall, a really horrific one in Alabama, a special education teacher making fun of his students on Facebook, posting inappropriate pictures, and I didn't follow up for updates, but when I read the articles a couple months after it happened, and they had not been able to fire him because they did not have a policy, and it's obviously embarrassing for that school district in Alabama. But I think it's just one of these. The thing that I think that we can do better, and I think this policy really starts us in that direction.
So we would like to entertain discussion and any questions or comments that you might have. We still strongly support this, obviously. We think we do need it in place, both to protect the district and to protect our individual employees. I think it's hard for employees to set the boundaries sometimes in these social networking sites. So we'd like to help set the boundaries so that people don't get themselves in difficulty. Yes, go ahead, Kim.
On the regulations on page C, you've added if applicable.
Yeah, because something like Twitter, you don't friend someone. It's only certain sites where you would make exclusivity. So just that language was just added.
Okay, I couldn't figure out why it was added. Now it makes sense.
Was this reviewed with all of the unions or just the
Yes,
WEA?
all of them. All of them.
And so I suppose the disciplinary consequences then, that was...
No, the original language that is struck out here was okay with everybody else. The WEA was not comfortable with it, so this language that's here is the same language that's in the employee conduct policy and in a couple of other policies where it is referenced that disciplinary action might take place. So we just changed the language so it's consistent from policy to policy.
A couple of questions. So the WEA is comfortable with this at this
I'm not
point?
sure.
Okay.
They wanted to make sure it wasn't up for approval tonight. I said, no, let's review and discuss
Okay.
tonight. So I don't know if we will hear further. We may.
Well, again, to respond to that further, I think that Ellen works really hard, I think, to try to set a tone, conversation, and trust with our employee groups. But I think at the end of the day, the board has to decide, if it's a policy that it can support. And I think that there doesn't need to be total agreement with everything that's in the policy. I think the one area where, as we do any policy, is we have to make sure that it doesn't unilaterally change the working conditions that people operate under here. So without being negotiated.
Right.
So I think it's not that there may always be disagreement on certain language or something, but I think as long as we're not changing the working conditions unilaterally, I think that's
Okay.
It gives the board the opportunity to
And we're
decide
really,
its policies.
and we're really trying to encourage employees who use technology to communicate with students that they use their building websites and their building communication tools and Edline and whatever else we've already established in the district, rather than going out to some of these more personalized communication methodologies.
And I know a few years ago, when I was PTA president, and we brought this to Dr. Richards' attention. At that time, we didn't have the Edline and the Power School and all of that, and many of the teachers were going out and using Facebook and setting up their own websites, and we brought this as a concern at that time. So this is good to see. My two-part question. One is how does this roll out to the teachers? How do they become aware of the new policy and the expectations and guidelines? And then the second question to that is, how do you police it and monitor it? That's got to be a huge task. So take whichever question you wish.
I think that should the board decide to enact the policy, it can be part of new teacher orientation, certainly for new teachers. That would be
We do a
important.
technology orientation with them when they come on their first day.
And I think this being new and being that some of the union groups were concerned, I think we could go to a staff meeting and make sure that they've read it and understand
We
it.
would work through the principals and through the bargaining unit leadership as well.
I think it's not, and one of the things I want to be really clear about, and we want to be clear about, is that this is not a policy that we're recommending so that we can, fire people or hammer them. It's just policy, if it's well-written, sets out the expectations that we have for our employees. And if there are issues where people have made a mistake, then we draw them back, and it's a teaching thing, and you say, here, let's, again, revisit where we are with our policy and move forward. So it's a teaching instrument.
I don't think we're going to be actively trolling Facebook. I think it's going to be one of those things that if someone hears of something, then we will investigate it. But, we're not, this Human Resources Director doesn't have time to troll Facebook.
Well, as a mother who does. If I were to notice something, what should a parent do then? Who should the parent contact?
I guess depending on what it is, it might be through a building principal or building administration, or central office, human resources, depending on what it is.
I think it does a really good job of telling teachers where the line is. What's acceptable, what's not acceptable, not knowing that there wasn't a policy already in place. Like, I know firsthand of teachers who have allowed students to friend them on Facebook. So as a result, they now have these little girls following them on Facebook, and it's not good for anybody. But now we know what is appropriate, what's not appropriate, whereas before we didn't. So I would think this is a very positive step. It's very helpful for teachers.
I think
it is for the
I would think.
Any other comments? Thank you. On to action items. We have policy and regulation 6144, controversial issues in the curriculum, and it's on for a discuss and approve. Mr. Canty's going to talk to us about it.
The board may recall that there were concerns expressed about the first two paragraphs of the policy. I hope that the recommendations have been responsive. You'll notice that, as recommended, the first sentence has been shortened, and the focus on the idea of values has been incorporated down below where recommended. The board had suggested that the last sentence of the first paragraph be embellished, be brought forward in a more specific way. But in reviewing the policy, it became apparent to me that the first paragraph is in many ways an introductory paragraph, a paragraph with a focus on definition. And the language in the second paragraph spoke to the educational obligation. So rather than try to deepen the last sentence of the first paragraph, I simply deleted that and looked at a reordering of the language in the second paragraph, which I think gets to the spirit of the recommendation that had been made. What is a controversial issue, and then what is our educational obligation to develop the ability in our students to form a critical stance?
Questions?
It addresses the concern that I had.
Any others?
No, I think it was a good edit.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. On to the healthy food certification statement.
I'm waiting for this all night.
Kim gets all the fun
I get all the good ones. You can see I'm an expert on healthy food. This is something that the State Department of Education requires the board to act on every year to certify whether or not we will participate in the Healthy Foods program. The program actually offers an incentive, reimburses the district an additional 10 cents per meal. In our case, this would end up less than $20,000 additional revenue for the food service program. In past years, we've declined to participate in the program. All food sold by our food service meets the requirements of the Wilton Public Schools nutrition policy and meets the standards for the state healthy foods certification and the National School Lunch Program. However, participating in this program puts restrictions on all food items offered for sale to students. That means we would have to discontinue a number of activities, such as selling snacks in the school store, bake sales, food-related fundraisers, and the high school culinary arts class lunch sales. So since we're operating within the guidelines in our nutrition policy, and we don't want to discontinue all these other activities, we're again recommending to the board that we elect not to participate in this program.
Do you know approximately how much money we're going?
A little less than $20,000. And that's in the food service program. It has nothing to do with the operating budget. That's a self-sustaining operation.
I'm comfortable with it. It's the way we've been doing business
Yeah.
for the last 4 or
Yeah.
5 years.
And as a founding member of the nutrition committee,
Several of us here.
I was her parent rep. I know how far the district has come in making sure that everything that is served in the cafeteria is every meal is above board, and it's a nice compromise, recognizing that there is more to carrots and apples. Sorry, Jen.
Minus 2 clicks.
Minus 2 clicks.
Any other comments? Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Having the salads, a side of tapioca.
I'm having a very strong sense of deja vu right now. I'm not quite sure why, but this next item, I feel like I've seen before.
Again and again.
We are excited to be talking about the Miller-Driscoll Statement of Requirements.
So excited.
Karen?
There are a few small technical items that needed to be changed. If you'll recall, at the meeting with the Board of Selectmen in April, Mr. Dubow asked about playgrounds. We had inadvertently omitted playgrounds, so they've now been added in. We have included the office for the Assistant Director of Special Education and the Special Education Secretary. They exist now at Miller-Driscoll. We just didn't put them in the list of spaces needed. We also omitted all school storage, such as that which exists in the lower level of Miller. So we added that back into the statement of requirements. And if you were at the Board of Selectmen's meeting, you recall the discussion on the restrooms. We have broadened the language on that and rephrased it to address some of those concerns. So there are really no substantive changes, they're all technical.
Any questions, comments?
Just thank you, Karen.
Yeah.
For persevering.
That was a lot.
Smile.
That actually wasn't a lot of work.
Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Wonderful. Future business and announcements timeline?
I didn't catch this, and I apologize. On the May 24th meeting, it's really should read administrator evaluation. We needed some additional time. I'll be coming forward at that time, and then the June 14th will be the superintendent evaluation, if that's okay with the board.
So that'll be a 6 o'clock executive session?
Yes.
On both the
On both, I believe.
24th and 14th.
6 o'clock.
Right.
Any other, so our next meeting is May 24th here in the professional library at 7 PM. We'll have an executive session before that.
At 6 p.m.
At 6 PM. As we do at the end of every meeting, we look for comments from the public. Seeing no members of the public here, we'd like to encourage everybody to email us if they have any questions, comments, or concerns. And with that, I adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
We didn't vote on this.